Hey guys, my name's Jocie. I'm a fashion designer, and today we're going to be talking about my opinions on the film The Devil Wears Prada. So, why am I talking about a film that was made in 2006? Well, I'm on fashion Twitter a lot, and every few weeks I see this film circulating. I'd only seen the film once, and it was fine. It wasn't really my type film. So I decided, you know what? I'll give it a rewatch. Maybe I missed something. Maybe this film is trying to say something. So we're going to be talking about the movie extensively, so this is going to contain spoilers if you haven't seen this film. Do keep in mind that there should be a trigger warning on it if you have any sort of issues with eating or weight or just seeing skinny people be called fat the entirety of the movie, then you might have an issue watching it, so just do keep that in mind before you go seek out the film. A lot of the takes that I see on Twitter is that Miranda isn't actually a villain, that she's a boss lady and she's to be admired, and that is not the case. Before I rewatched the movie, I was kind of confused as to how people walked away with it, but on rewatch, I understand more about where people are coming from in the way that the movie is framed, especially at the end, that you could have this misconception. So I'm going to kind of go through on why I think Miranda is an abusive, horrible boss. So a lot of people will point out the montage that's in the movie. You know the one where Miranda's constantly throwing her coat on Andy's desk and is telling her to go do tasks. The tasks she is telling Andy to do aren't incredibly abusive. They're pretty much all in her job description, and she's just kind of not super happy about having to do them. But I could give you a very quick montage of what she is doing in other scenes that is abusive. The employees are never allowed to leave their desk. There's a moment where Emily can't even get up and pee until Andy comes back from her errands. Your work can't chain you to your desk. You're allowed to go pee, you're allowed to go eat, you're allowed to go get coffee. If you miss a call, you miss a call. I'm sorry, Miranda, you have to pick up your phone every once in a while. Miranda is also constantly moving due dates and the times in which things are supposed to happen, and then yells at the people when they're not ready. There's a whole instance where they're supposed to have like options for her to pick outfits at a certain time, and then she moves it up by 45 minutes. So everybody runs there and tries to get everything ready, and in that exact same moment, she's just complaining about, why is nobody ready? I don't understand. Where are all the great ideas? And it's like, well, if you didn't change your mind every 5 seconds, people would be ready, and then you wouldn't have to deal with people not being ready if you just stuck to your time slots. Miranda has a pair of twins, and Andy is doing their homework, their science project to be exact, and she's doing this at home on her own time, and I very much doubt she's actually being paid for it. And she would probably definitely be fired if it doesn't get complete, and there'll be consequences if they don't get an A. If that's not abuse, then I don't know what is. Miranda works off of this punish and reward type system. Do good, you get a reward. Do bad, you get punished. And these aren't actually based off of what people do in their job descriptions and how well they do their job. It's just how well Miranda feels that they did in their job, regardless of the outcome. First example that we get in the movie of Miranda just being really extra. So Andy's out to dinner with her dad, and she gets a call from Miranda telling her that she needs to find her a flight home from Florida. And there is a hurricane currently, so Andy tries her best all night and can't find a plane to get her, which isn't entirely shocking because, you know, hurricane. Andy is then called into Miranda's office and then is verbally abused for about 10 minutes. In this talk, Miranda uses abusive language like calling her fat and ugly and just getting her because she was boring, and then she also says that she's disappointed in her, which personally I really hate when anybody uses the term disappointed. You're not my mom. You can't be disappointed in me. Try again. After this conversation, Andy goes and talks to a coworker named Nigel, who we'll talk about later. She's just like, my boss is mean to me, and Nigel's response to this is to tell her two truths, and then that equals a lie. The two truths being that, number one, Andy to this point is not very good at her job, and she is not putting very much effort into it. The second truth is that other people would kill to have her job. He then uses this to equal that Miranda can treat Andy any way that she wants, because Andy hasn't earned her respect. Miranda doesn't have time to actually treat you like you're a person. Which, no, it doesn't matter how hard you're not doing your job or the fact that other people would want to have your job. That doesn't give your boss the excuse to call you ugly. If Miranda was that upset with the job that she's been doing and she's not doing it at her job, a good boss would call their employee and be like, hey, you're not really reaching the potential I thought you were going to when I hired you, and you need to step up your game or be fired. That would be acceptable. After Andy actually starts doing good at her job and completing tasks and actually getting all the things right, then Miranda rewards her by calling her her name. Yeah, that's right. Up until this point, Miranda has just called Andy Emily, which Emily is Miranda's first assistant. So Andy hasn't even had her name be used in about the month that she's been working. It's a reward to be called by your actual name. The second part of her reward is that she can start delivering the book to Miranda's house. Yay! More work. So Andy gets the privilege of delivering the book to Miranda's house, and while she's doing there, a miscommunication happens and she ends up walking in on Miranda and her husband having an argument, and Miranda sees her. So then the next day at work, she is punished for seeing Miranda vulnerable. You invite people into your house, they're expected to hear and see some things, so maybe just you wait around and get your own book if you need it nightly, instead of making people come into your house. Or just, like, own a frickin', like, mail slot. Like, can't they just, like, slide the book in? Anyways, so as punishment for seeing Miranda vulnerable, Andy is then demanded to find a unpublished book, and if she can't find this book by the end of the workday, then she's fired. You know, do an impossible task or be fired. That's realistic. Some guy finds the book for her, is able to get it to her, and she's able to return it to Miranda's desk on time. Miranda is slightly approving and doesn't fire her, so yay. Didn't get fired for doing something that I shouldn't even be physically possible to do. Aren't I a boss? Any other upward mobility we see happening to Andy throughout the movie is a direct punishment for something that Emily did. So the first instance we see of this is Andy gets to go to a specific party that's going to have a bunch of influential people there, and it's usually supposed to only be the first assistant that goes. However, Emily has dared to catch a cold and go to work, which, like, if she didn't come to work, then she would be fired. So the whole reason Emily and Andy are even going to this party is so that they can tell Miranda who the people are before they approach her, so she can act like she actually knows everybody at the party. While at the party, there is a situation where Emily can't remember one couple's name, and Andy steps in and tells Miranda the name. Emily then gets punished by not getting to go to Paris, something that's like the only benefit for her working as first assistant, and it gets to go to Andy. And this isn't because Andy did a good at her job. Andy remembered one couple's name out of the entirety of the night. Emily remembered everyone else's name, and Miranda didn't know anybody's name. So it's like, Emily is just punished for accidentally forgetting somebody's name, and it's a huge punishment. It does not fit the crime at all. It's upsetting. Miranda then makes Andy go to Paris, and she makes Andy tell Emily that Emily will no longer be going to Paris, which Andy obliges because, of course, Andy must tell or be fired. Miranda really likes to almost fire people. It's almost abusive. On this trip, Andy gets to see more of Miranda and actually gets to be more involved in her personal life, and this is the moment where Miranda actually had a personable moment. It's in this moment Miranda opens up to Andy and tells her that her and her husband are getting a divorce, and that it's her, like, fourth divorce, and she's really worried about how the media is going to make it look because she's a woman who's had many different divorces and she's in the workplace. Honestly, most of the stuff she's complaining about is just stuff that she could have helped. Like, if she didn't micromanage every department and their decisions, then she could actually spend more time at home with her husbands and probably not have so many divorces. Or, you know, if she wasn't working overtime all the time because she just constantly changed her mind about how she wanted things. There's this whole instance where in the beginning of the movie, she wants to completely change the cover that they've already worked on, which not only costs them a lot of money, it also costs them a lot of time. That's not good. Those are really bad bosses. Like, she shouldn't be in charge of anybody. She can't even make up her mind for 5 minutes. And I understand the movie doing this. The movie is almost clever about doing this, and then it decides to just not be, but we'll get there. Anyways. We also get an insight about how her other coworkers feel about Miranda in this moment. Directly after this scene, there's a scene between Andy and a coworker, Nigel, celebrating the fact that he gets to be like a co-founder in a specific section of a company or something like that. And he's really excited about this. There's a moment where he literally says he's so excited to actually have control of his own life after 15 years. He can only leave because she set up, and so he can get the job because she said it's okay. He can't just leave because he wants to. After this scene, we then have the twist that the movie almost did. Miranda's job is threatened. It's going to be taken away from her and given to someone else. So she then decides to set up the girl who's going to replace her with a new job. That job happens to be the exact job that Nigel was going to get. So she backstabs her most loyal worker in order for her to keep her own job. She proved that she is the dragon lady that everyone thought she is because she is willing to sacrifice anybody in her way in order for her to keep the power that she's gotten. So why do people think that Miranda's good, actually? Because the movie decides to shoot itself in the foot. The last moments between Andy and Miranda is the scene where they're driving in a car together. Andy is upset with Miranda for backstabbing Nigel. Miranda then claims to Andy that she's done the same thing because she did it to Emily, and that they're the same, actually. And Andy's like, ugh, I don't want to be you. And Miranda's like, who wouldn't want to be us? Everyone wants to be us. So after this conversation, Andy ends up leaving because she doesn't want to be Miranda, and that is the reason that she left. Not because she was being abused, mind you, no. Because she didn't want to end up like her boss, which I understand. I wouldn't really want that either. After this, Andy then leaves, goes to her new job interview. She's asked like, oh, why didn't the other job work out? And she still can't bring herself to be like, oh, well, I was working in a hugely abusive environment. Like, no, for some reason, even though she's quit because she doesn't like Miranda and doesn't want to be where she is at the end of her life, she's just like, well, I guess I just failed. I guess I just wasn't good enough for the job. And then the guy pulls the lovely cliche of, oh, well, Miranda messaged us and she said she was very disappointed in you, but if we didn't hire you, we would be an idiot. Andy gets her dream job after she quits. And that's not set up at all. That just comes out of nowhere. At no point in this movie would it be suggested that Miranda would respect Andy for leaving the industry in the way that she did, enough to be like, oh, here, fly bird, have your dream job. Especially when, like, Nigel just like 2 scenes before was like, oh, I can't get a job anywhere else until Miranda tells me I can and suggests it, and I would just be dead in the industry if I tried it any other way. And it's just like, okay, yeah, so we're supposed to believe that that same woman who's worked with Andy for a significantly less time is like mutual respect. And then they have this scene at the end of the movie where like Miranda's coming out of her office and Andy's walking down the street and they just see each other and they're just like, mutual respect, we're both boss babes. And it's like, no, why? That's not Miranda's character. Miranda would sabotage the rest of your career. You would have to leave town just to get a job in any sort of industry that you wanted after she was done with you. Like, no. These friends serve as the opposing side to the toxic work environment in which Andy is currently in. So they're supposed to be the ones being like, hey, you've changed and your work kind of sucks. I understand elements of this, because you need an opposing side to your toxic work environment, but then they just, like, two of them explode on her at a certain point in the movie, and they don't make sense both times that explosion actually happens. When they talk to her, they act like these are her choices that she's making, and really the only choice that she makes is in the clothes that she wears and the fact that she just wants to fit in at her work. Like, that's a choice that she makes. But I feel like living in any work environment, you kind of adapt in order to survive type thing, and I feel like if she had continued to dress the way that she dressed just because she wanted to be herself, that she would not have last very long in that work environment just because they were so nasty to her. Many times just like, why don't you quit? And it's like, well, because I don't have another job option. Like, at the beginning of the movie, she said she sent out all her resumes, and this is the only place she could get a job. So this is currently her only option, and it's the best option because if she stays here for a year, then she can hopefully end up with her dream job by the end of it. It's just a missed opportunity because they don't expand on this idea. It could be clever. Having friends and family that put the blame on the individual person instead of the system in which they're working in is something that happens all the time in real life, and it would be very interesting if they had used this to be like, oh, they're all mad at Andy, but in reality, Andy's not doing anything. She's not making any active choices. She's not trying to be something that she's not. She's just getting swept up in this toxic work environment that she often doesn't have a choice in what she does. Her working late isn't her choice. Her telling Emily that she's going to Paris instead of her isn't a choice. She's often faced with choose or fire, and that's not really fair. But instead, the movie just completely ignores this nuance, and at the end of the movie, Andy goes to her boyfriend and is like, you were right. Trigger warning, we are now talking about the weight portion of this movie. Now we come to the part of the movie that really bothers me. It really is what makes this movie just unenjoyable to me, even just as like a fun chick flick. So at work, Andy has two coworkers, that is Emily and Nigel. These coworkers are awful. They're constantly calling her fat, and Andy is in, even if she was, this would not be cool. You can't say that to people, but she's not. She's played by Anne Hathaway. She's not fat. The movie even acknowledges this. They say she's a size 6. That's not fat. At all. That's really skinny. Could this be clever? Are they trying to point out that the fashion world has a huge problem with weight, has ridiculous views on beauty? No, of course the movie's not saying that. The movie never has an opposing side to this view. In that scene about her boyfriend fixing her a sandwich, he is not at all concerned that she doesn't want to eat it. He just is worried about the $8 cheese that he put in it. So Emily and Nigel, they both start off pretty catty at the beginning of the movie, and then they both become a bit more endearing and more of Andy's friends by the end of it. In both of their scenes where they're supposed to be closest to Andy, they both again mention her weight. In Nigel's scene, when he's telling her about his job promotion, he says that, oh, let me see your size 6 ass, and Andy responds, it's a size 4 ass. So, like, this is supposed to be a joke between them now, that she dropped a size that she didn't need to drop because she was perfectly fine and healthy in the size that she was. So it just, like, perpetuates this idea that this is fun. And then in another scene, when Andy is trying to make up with Emily, she offers to give her the clothes that she got in Paris as kind of like a peace offering. Emily then accepts this gift, but also side mentions that she'll have to take it in because it'll swallow her, to which Andy laughs and they make up and it's okay now. So, like, even in, like, their most friendly of moments, they're still mentioning her weight. The second thing the movie does is they stop showing her eating. So at the beginning of the movie, there are about 2 scenes of her actually eating food. So that's at the very beginning in the opening montage when she eats a bagel, and then when she goes to lunch, she starts to eat clam chowder, which of course Nigel shames her for doing and then literally throws it away because Miranda moved up that meeting, remember? So you just don't get to eat. Throughout the rest of the film, the only other time we see her in the same scene as food is when her boyfriend offers her a sandwich and she doesn't want to eat it because she's too mad. I understand that, but it's just, okay. And then there's tons of scenes where she's in a restaurant. Very easily you could show her eating food and they just don't. So she just never eats on screen again. And it's just kind of concerning, especially when you're doing a ton of jokes about how people are not eating and then Andy ends up losing weight at the end of your movie. Like, what are you suggesting? Andy meets up with her boyfriend at the end of the movie and they are in a restaurant. A really easy way to show Andy's change and the fact that she's kind of going back to old Andy and she doesn't really care about the trivial things anymore would be to simply give her a plate of food and let her take a bite of it. This would be a callback to the beginning of the movie when she was okay with eating, and it would have been kind of a clever way to show that Andy's growing. Now, you might be sitting here and be like, it's a movie, it's a fun chick flick that I enjoy, and that's totally fine. Watch what you want to watch, enjoy what you enjoy. I don't personally really care. My big problem with this movie is two things, really. The first is when people suggest that a person that didn't watch the movie when it came out watches it now, and yet they never tell them any of the problems that come with it because they're watching it through nostalgic color glasses. That is a possible problem, especially if there's younger people who didn't grow up with it watching it for the first time, for specifically the fashion element in it, which is, you know, fine. It's clothing from 2006, so nothing really revolutionary in that movie, but if you want to watch it for the style, then fine. That's up to you. Just know that with that style comes certain type of jokes that you might not be okay with. My other big problem, seeing Miranda as a strong woman in the workplace, is just a possibly harmful idea to have. If this is your idea of a boss and she's just doing a great job, then that might alter the way you look at your future work environment and your expectations for working in certain industries. And that's not okay. It's not okay anything that any of these employees go through. It's not okay for your boss to treat you like crap just because they're the quote-unquote best. It's not okay to work overtime and not get paid for it. None of that is okay. And I understand if you're in a position and that's all you can do and you just can't get out of it. I understand that, and I'm sorry. That sucks. But that's not your fault. The industry shouldn't be able to do that to you. And the more we accept that that's okay, then the more the industry is just going to do it. Businesses don't have hearts and souls. They're just going to do what they can get away with until they're told they can't do that anymore. A business is nothing without the people that work for it. A boss is not successful without a good team under them. The idea that you should be grateful for your position and your job and you should kiss your boss's ass because they allow you to work where you work is just, it's just bullshit. Just because there are other people that want your job, they're not the people that currently have it. You are. Nobody has the particular set of skills that you have, with the mindset that you have, with the experience that you have. You're a unique person in the workplace. Your job should be privileged to have you and should be kissing your ass. You should not be kissing theirs. Yeah, so anyways, that's it. That's all I have to say. I'm out of steam now. If you want to share any of your own opinions of this movie, I'll be happy to read them in the comments. I'm interested in what people's perspective is. Thank you guys for watching today's video. If you feel like it and want to subscribe, that would be awesome. I post weekly, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Goodbye. I will see you when I see you again.